Joe, I have a question. So you're helping support, run, lead two separate organizations. We have Masterpiece and then we have Fort Meade Alliance. Any key principles or leadership styles that you have that are either the same or different?
Thankfully, my leadership style is, the idea is sort of the servant leader. Put Me Alliance is an all volunteer army. Okay, I mean literally, they have to want to do what you need them to do, and I learned that too. I learned that really well, at the NSA. It didn't matter what rank I had. My Eagles didn't mean anything inside those buildings. It was my ability to influence people, to motivate people, to inspire people,
Yeah.
to get them to do the sorts of things. So you don't tell these people how to do what they do. You support, you advocate, you enable, you cheer, and that's the approach that both organizations, I think, need to be successful.
Welcome to The Diligent Leader. I'm Alex Shakiri, one of your hosts.
And I'm Kaylee Jacobix.
Good to be here with you today. We have a great guest with us today, Kaylee, don't we?
Yes, we do. We have Joe Pacileo, who is a wonderful leader, not only in his career, but the community as well. He's the president and CEO-elect of Masterpiece, as well as the president of Fort Meade Alliance. So, Joe, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Kaylee, and thank you, Alex. You guys have a pretty cool podcast here. I hope I don't bring down your ratings.
I think if anything, you're going to boost it up. So thank you
there you
again
go.
for joining us.
Well, thanks for joining us today. So, so let's just start off. Tell us a little bit about you, Joe. Tell us about Joe. What do the people don't know about you?
I don't even know about me. In fact, I can't stand talking about myself. So I'm going to try to do this gently for both of us. So I grew up in California, yay, way out west. But I ended up graduating college, getting married, and going on active duty through an ROTC scholarship, all in the same week. Boom. And never really resided again in California to go back to see my folks, etc. But lived around the world, had a 25-year military career, and enjoyed majority of my assignments being at Fort Meade, working with the NSA and Cyber Command. Got into cyber very, very early, and at the point where I retired, I was actually running the offense for the agency as well as Cyber Command. Lots of fun, lots of exciting opportunity there. Jumped out of that and went right into industry, at least the Defense Industrial Base surrounding that mission at Fort Meade. Worked for Northrop Grumman, Mantech, Task, which was later bought by Agility, SAIC, and really enjoyed that work supporting the mission again, continue to support that mission at Fort Meade. From there, I had an old boss show me his business plan on his phone in my backyard. I followed him into the commercial world. 8 years later, we rang the bell at the New York Stock Exchange for
Fantastic.
Oh my goodness.
1.3 billion.
A lot of experience here.
1.3 billion.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. But I will tell you that the best part of that experience, at least the one that I take with me, is the backside of that hill, and all those lessons learned. Everything goes up that goes up usually does come down at some point, and I took good note of all of that, and have some wonderful experiences, and feel pretty good for continuing on as an effective business leader.
Well,
all those lessons learned.
I definitely say dinner's on Joe.
Yeah.
Oh no, I wouldn't go that far. The backside was a pretty quick slide, but
Yeah,
it is what it is.
Joe,
Money isn't everything, guys.
yeah.
Very true.
I'm
True.
seeing your your background there. You have a lot of flags, loving it, but I also see the North Shore. Is that from Hawaii?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a very fun place for
Yeah.
me to enjoy getting out in the surf there. Wonderful time out there in Hawaii with the family. Yeah, yeah.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
Very
One
nice.
of many places.
Well, anything else you want to share that you like to do? Pastime, fun, personal?
Ooh, I have a house up in Maine. Had that up there for many years. Enjoy getting up there, especially the opportunity to work remotely up there is wonderful. Spending time with family up there, and it's just it gives me a good balance of work life. Wonderful area we live here in Maryland. I will say that I don't know that people appreciate this area as much as they ought to. But I can tell you, living around the world, we have a wonderful society here, and a great place to work, raise a family, do all the things that are sort of the best things in life.
Well, I lived in Maine for a little while, and I can say that I love Maryland, but I lived up in Brunswick, Maine. So I was
Okay.
actually, when I was in the Navy, I was stationed out of VP 26. So I spent a lot of time up there, and Maine is beautiful as well. Horrible winter sometimes, but beautiful at that though. But it's definitely it's a great place, and it does. I do as a Marylander, I appreciate it. And so now, so like you said, you're here in Maryland. You got a lot. So tell us how what I think people would love to hear about what's your current leadership role right now, and where are you spending your time?
Sure. Yeah. When I left that crazy startup um, to stop, when I left that opportunity, I came right to Masterpiece, and joined Masterpiece as the president and CEO. And Masterpiece is a great organization, great company. It's really the kind of company that I belong in. It's mostly really high-end software engineers, software developers,
Mm,
providing really strong capabilities and services to that mission right there at Fort Meade. Always wanted to get back to serving Fort Meade area from a business perspective, and Masterpiece is right in the thick of it. Great organization. I also have some other duties serving Fort Meade Alliance, which is a very large nonprofit organization in the community organization that that allows me to sort of give back and be a part of a more broader sort of good, if you will.
great. Now, how long have you been at the Fort Meade Alliance?
Oh my God. I never thought through that. Maybe 15, 16 years, many years. I was the vice president for a number of presidents, the treasurer. I really never wanted to be the president. And there was that one time where they said, everybody, those of you who volunteer, step forward. And I was asleep. Everybody stepped back, and I ended up in the job. So I'm, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
having a good old time managing a job that's quite significant, but really rewarding.
Right.
Yeah. And Mojo's a part of Fort Meade Alliance, so we see you there as president and the things that you're doing. So I'm glad that you are the president and doing what you're doing, right?
Well, yeah, Mojo is great members of the community. I mean, you guys are involved in so many things that aren't just about your organization. You're actually out there making a difference, and there's a lot of companies just like you in this area that have that social responsibility to take it to another level. And so, big hats off to Mojo
Well,
for
thank you.
all that you do.
Yeah.
So, oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Also, a fun fact. So I had met you a couple years ago, Joe, and I had seen how you're leading. I see how you are in the community and with your organizations, and I asked you to be my mentor, and actually through the Fort Meade Alliance as well. So they do a mentorship program, and that's kind of how I got involved and kind of getting to know you a little bit more. So it's been it's been very helpful for me, not only for my professional, but personal growth as well. So I want to thank you for that.
You're a great
So
man.
I have a question for you. As you're with your various leadership positions, like what's been a key philosophy, as we're on this, this channel, obviously the diligent leader, I think people would love to know is what's your main philosophy and how you approach your leadership role?
Yeah, no, I sort of thought through that many, many years ago and just kind of I've always sort of stayed focused on a couple of principles. Key to running an organization, right? Maybe not so much as an individual leader where you just have, I don't mean to belittle that, but you have a direct relationship with the worker. Being an organizational leader, you have to have a different approach. I've got a graduate degree in this sort of thing, so it's really it's very there's a lot of science involved in it. One of the key things is you really have to empower the workforce. You can't be able to do everything, be a part of everything. You're not going to make every decision. You absolutely have to power that down. Um, and a lot of leaders really set out to do that. But some of them maybe come up short in that they aren't readily willing to underwrite mistakes, right? So they power down, but something goes wrong, they jump in the middle of it, they fix it, and basically you end up disempowering folks. Got to
Yeah.
accept the outcomes of that leadership chain all the way down and be willing to underwrite their mistakes.
Yeah.
Meaning you absorb those, right? They
Right.
get the credit, you get the blame. The
It's
minute
true.
you show a leader in your chain that their mistake, that you actually have that covered, they won't be afraid to do that. They'll continue to do their best in their job, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's a big.
I think that's really fascinating because there was I think part of that problem that you're bringing up really stems from the fact that um, most business owners were at one point the technicians, right? They were the people out there doing the job, they were doing the craft, and they felt that some decision, okay, I can do this better. And they had enough entrepreneurial spirit in them to take that chance, right? And they knew they were going to make a gamble. And so they are the technician. Even years later, as you're saying, they're in that leadership role. They're kind of saying, hey, hey, let me show you how to do this. And I think the best intentions is to be a teacher, and they have the vision of one day I won't do this, and I'm not going to be a micromanager. But it is a big challenge when you're faced with that because it's your creation, right? You're vested, you're making this happen. And so I think at the end of the day, that's a real challenge for a business owner. So I hear what you're saying, and I can tell you, and I'll just reaffirm even from my leadership roles that I still struggle with that because my inherent go-to is to address it and do it. But at the same time, I do try to say why I did it, right? I take the time to stop, share it, and say, okay, this is why we're doing this, so they can understand the impact. The team that I'm working with that can understand the impact of why that decision was being made. But I think I could always continually do a better job or continue to strive and work toward giving that autonomy to them so they can have their own failures, right? Because I learned from pain, I learned from failures. So it's a challenge.
You're absolutely right, Alex. You hit it right on the head. Most organizations, if they're successful, they graduate, right? And quite often the leadership that was there at the beginning doing that sort of direct leader role, very well suited for that, et cetera. They're either not prepared to, or they're just not able to graduate to the next level of leadership as an organization becomes, starts to build out. And it's funny because in the Army, when you graduate to this next level leadership, they send you to another unit, right? You are no longer with your friends that you now have to be the leader of. And they sort of ensure that these breakpoints are clarified. We don't do that in the business. I mean, an owner can very much graduate all the way through, and some of them are very, very capable. But I will tell you, one of the big lessons learned on that big run that I had with the commercial organization was, getting the right folks at the right time, and at every step of these graduation points. So, yeah, it's very, very important.
Joe, I have a question. So you're helping support, run, lead two separate organizations. We have Masterpiece and then we have Fort Meade Alliance. Are there key principles that you have for leadership or, you know, for both? Do they cross over? Are you at Masterpiece and then you go to Fort Meade? Like any key principles or leadership styles that you have that are either the same or different?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I'm really lucky, Kaylee, because thankfully, my leadership style is, the idea is sort of the servant leader. Fort Meade Alliance is an all volunteer army. Okay, I mean literally, these are folks that they don't have to do what you tell them to do. They have to want to do what you need them to do, and I learned that too. I learned that really well, at the NSA. It didn't matter what rank I had. My Eagles didn't mean anything inside those buildings. It was my ability to influence people, to motivate people, to inspire people,
Yeah.
to get them to do the sorts of things. So, it doesn't. There's no. I use that same philosophy at Masterpiece, right? I mean, I'm dealing with probably some of the smartest minds that clearly are the most beautiful minds that are out there, and you don't tell these people how to do what they do. You support, you advocate, you enable,
Mhm.
you cheer, and that's the approach that both organizations, I think, need to be successful. So that's me. That's how we have learned to do it. I'm pretty comfortable with that.
So Joe, as I was sitting here listening to you, it's almost like, and I don't know if you've had this problem, and it sounds like you have. I think I'm almost literally saying the essence of what you're saying is that there is also a distinct difference between, like you said, the people who have to listen to you in the military versus the public sector, where it is really optional, and they can go get a new job, they can leave if they're unhappy, right? And so there's options, but when you face that transition from the military to the private sector or public sector, I should say. No, private sector. I must mess that up. But what are some of you know the self checks or strategies you've had to kind of really cajole those people, or have you even seen that challenge for yourself?
No, I will admit I really haven't had any significant challenge in that. I mean, you're right, Alex. You can, with the way the military is organized and structured, you can get by with commanding, ordering, telling, and these sorts of things. And don't get me wrong, I'm very proud of my military service, but I really never drank the Kool-Aid. Okay. I was always sort of my own person in that regard. I didn't have ever really recognized my own rank or stature or position. I really felt compelled to inspire, motivate, and get people to want to do things. So transitioning into business or even serving that civilian workforce at the agency,
Right.
it was fairly natural. Now, I will say there was one big difference that when I left sort of the government thing world and went into business that took me a while to get into my head. I had this one boss who really drove me crazy, but he was right. He kept telling me, Joe, if you don't make the bottom line, you can't serve your people. Not out here. You can do that, when you continue to have the resources that flow regardless. But when you're out here, you have to be mindful of those numbers.
Yeah.
And so that was a big lesson, because I do believe you take care of the people, they'll take care of the mission,
Mm-hmm.
but you got to be careful with that business aspect of it.
So Joe, you mentioned obviously Kaylee said, you mentored her and, and you're kind of going through that relationship. And then you also had this, leader that you looked up to. Have been there anybody else in your career that's really kind of mentored you that you really look back and reflect on that was really valuable to your growth?
Yeah. Alex, I actually had like three categories of mentors.
Okay.
I had, in the military, um, great leaders, a couple of guys who made it all the way to the top. And I learned from those folks, that, you know, you have to be yourself. Couldn't just like copy their system, even though they had the best system.
Right.
In that same group, though, I had two of the worst leaders. And these were the guys that I got the most from, because they gave me that little book of not to do's. And that was a book, and that is a book that I keep with me at all times. That group, was actually extremely, impactful on me. The
Hmm.
second group of leaders have been women in leadership. Okay. And, I've been blessed with just having super strong, capable women in leadership roles that, that I would follow in the battle. I would follow off a cliff. The ladies like Teresa Shea, Doreen Harwood, Linda Miller, they taught me that traditional leadership approach, there is no such thing. All right.
Hmm.
Effective leadership comes in very different flavors. And I really learned to open my aperture up, to a more broad, more diverse sort of leadership set of skills and techniques, approaches. The third group, if I may,
Please, please.
um, Haley falls into that group.
Oh,
I
okay.
do a
You
lot of
tell.
I do a lot of mentoring. I never just, I don't know how to say no. If somebody says, Joe, I want you to be my mentor, I say yes. And there's a little selfishness in this, because I have this idea that, well, I know this as a fact, that my mentees actually teach me how to be a better leader. I've learned so much from my mentees, and I really sort of force the issue. So, a lot of them think, oh man, you're such a good guy, Joe, you're going to mentor me. And Joe really he wants to grow. He wants to have that perspective. And I've got like one of the best examples. I don't want to go into, but I have like one of the best examples of this young sergeant. And she just like blew me away with like how, her thoughts and her reasoning and her approach to leadership. So I've made it a point to take in those situations as well. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. I was actually going to bring that up in one of our, mentoring sessions. We were talking about leadership, management, all of that. And I will never forget what you said about being a leader is that you're always continuously learning, having continued relationships as a mentor and even a mentee, even still, right? And that there's always something new to learn to always better yourself. It's not that you're just, okay, I'm in this leadership position, I have this title and that's it. It's learning from your employees, it's learning from the community and continuing, growth, personal
Yeah.
and professional, so
Yeah, and I was just thinking about this a little bit as well. And, I liked what you said is that, and how I interpret what you were saying is that there are all types of leaders, right? And with those different leaders, they require different environments. Like we had a client down in Florida that literally ran a Wolf of Wall Street like environment in transportation logistics, right? But it was that type of environment that needed that kind of leader because the mission was different, right? It wasn't, it varies from industry to industry and leader types, right? But it's a chemistry, right? I always think about people grouping together and that they complement each other. Like, always think about every, you know, what are those, a journey, a group of people. You got the nerd, you got the slick person, you got the salesy one, you got the data driven one. Every successful team, every story ever told has a nice balance of people. And I think depending upon who's the leader who has those other attributes or characteristics innate in them emerge as your leaders, but they have to, I think it's an unknown choreographed dance that they take because of the natural yin and yang of their personalities. And so I reaffirm what you're saying is that leaders are different, environments are different, and it's not a one size fits all. And I think that's what a lot of viewers who watch the podcast are wondering. Well, what is that answer? Give me the answer. And as a leader, when you're building on your own, you don't get anybody saying, here is the answer. You have to figure it out. And so, anyway, that's just some thought. I don't know what your take on that is, but that's how I see it.
Yeah, that's spot on, Alex. 100%. I couldn't couldn't have said it better.
Well, thank you very much. But no, I definitely think that that's the message I think that people need to hear. And so with that, like from your leadership roles that you have, and you talk about strategies, and there's different missions you have to go perform, right? So what would you say is your big mission right now at both Masterpiece as well as Fort Meade? Like, what is your number one, the item that you put the most triage on, the one that you focus the most on for each of those organizations? What are your missions at hand right now?
Yeah. I think over at Masterpiece, for me, the most important thing I can do is enable the organization to continue to serve more broadly. Okay. I guess it's a nice way of saying grow the business, but not just because growing means financials. Yeah, I think in Masterpiece's case, growing means, serving a broader base of customers with the kind of service that they deserve, that we can provide. Okay, I'm in love with our engineers and what they can bring on contract. I'm over the moon with those engineers when it comes to developing technologies into capabilities and bringing those to bear. That's what we have, both missions. We provide services and capabilities. And it just gets me up out of bed every morning. I get after it and I wear myself out getting it done with these guys because they're the best. And I want them to have a broader reach. And so kind of maturing the company.
Yeah.
In a responsible way so that we can serve more and better. Not more better, I know that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But more and better. With the Fort Meade Alliance, we're on, the big mission over the last decade had been to really position ourselves as that trusted advocate, right? In the community. We don't do any lobbying. We are not here to put money in anybody's pocket. We are here to serve. We are here to make a difference. And we bring sustainable programs to this community that support education and workforce development. Our mission there is to develop the student and workforce pipeline. And so we have a number of programs, right? We have Project Scope, we have Techmania, we have career days. We were in over 20 different schools this last year, reaching hundreds, over 1,000 students with these programs, talking to them about the importance of maintaining your ability to have a clearance and the opportunities associated, showing them what technology in action means. STEM knowledge equates to these kind of really cool things.
Right.
talking to them about being, a future leader, et cetera. That committee of ours, it really makes a big impact. We also have another committee that's called the Meade Business Connect Committee, and their mission is to connect industry with government. And in that role, we put on 5 different events this year, major key leader events. We had the director commander of Cyber Command, we had the president of UMBC, we had the executive director of Cyber Command, we had the president and CEO of the University of Maryland, Baltimore, Washington Medical Center. We had all 3 procurement leaders from the big 3 big events doing that. And then we have this military and family effort where we're supporting the military and the families on post through the Coon Hall Resiliency Center that we funded and led the charge on, et cetera, et cetera. The bottom line is we're in it as a community organization.
Right.
And I just want to continue to grow that ability to serve even more better.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, so I have a question if you don't mind, Kaylee.
Yeah.
So, there's leadership, right, of the mission. There's leadership of people, right? And so really from a strategy side, like when you think of growing and you mentioned growing, like do you have a strategy that it's just in your back pocket, your go-to methodology that's worked for you in the past? When you look at new technology innovations and new programs, some of these programs you're mentioning, whether it be for Fort Meade or, Masterpiece, like what's your general strategy?
Well,
or is it really case by case?
I think it's somewhat case by case. I mean, we're talking about technology and, we deal at Masterpiece, we deal with hardcore leading edge type of technologies, trying to develop them into capabilities that can be applied and, et cetera, et cetera. We are very much focused on, sort of those trends in technology right now. AI, ML is a big part of the future, and we are heavily invested in creating abilities there. Please.
So let's take a look at that, right? So you're talking AI, ML, right? And I'm not necessarily needing to know my question's not necessarily what specifically you're doing, but what is your strategy to implement, like research, implement and adopt, and then use that sort as a, part of your services? Like, so when a new technology comes around, like what's your strategy from that regard with AI, for example?
No, well, okay. So generally speaking, across any technology, sort of my lesson learned is you put a bunch of great smart guys together and they're going to create something really great, but it doesn't leave the room. You absolutely have to apply the principles of the market and have a go-to-market strategy to make that actually applicable and in the hands of the user. I mean, there's way too much competition in technology today to just have a great idea or even a great solution or capability. It's tough to take, beautiful minds who are noodling through this really technical problem and solving it and getting them to understand, okay, let's look at the use case of that. Okay, how does that actually matter? Who will buy that? Okay. And how do we find out? Fast, right? Because you can't mess around. You have to fail fast and move on to the next. If it's not right, great idea, but it's only for you and your next door neighbor, or it's kind of a very niche sort of thing, as opposed to this has a market,
Sure.
Et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that whole execution and taking the great minds, putting a marketing plan and getting it out there, that is typically the moment of paralysis for a lot of business owners, because I think as a leader, and I say business owners, leaders, right? It doesn't matter what you do. I think that the challenge is you're trying to, one, we all have an insecurity. Am I doing it right? Right? Am I going to fail? And so I think you're struggling with that. And then on the opposite side of that, you're saying, okay, we're doing something new and innovative. Is this going to work? And what is the result when you don't even know what the result is? My result going to be good when you don't even know what a result looks like? And I think that's typically, the moment where you say, okay, I think I would love to what your strategy on this, but do you just do it and be bold, or do you have a more of a calculated approach? I think there's a lot of different types of leaders that would respond differently to your answer. So what's right for you? Like what's right for Joe?
Well, I'll tell you, I jumped right to the whole product market fit.
Okay.
When we got a great idea, one of the lessons learned, the company that I served in, it was a great company, it was a great product, but we went for a couple of years really not fully understanding our product market fit. Um, we and I've seen technologies that we've had at Masterpiece struggle with, okay, what's this going to serve? Where does this fit? And I harken back to one of the best product leaders I've ever been around. And I will get this wrong, but that person told me something to the effect that, let me just pull it out of my head here. Building a market that fits, building a product that fits a market is extreme, and succeeding with that is extremely challenging. Okay. Building a product that doesn't fit the market is impossible, right? So just keep circling back to that. Who cares? And will they buy it?
Right.
Yeah.
What is going to bring them value? And I like that you mentioned too about fail fast, right? That's something that
Yeah.
we
live
kind of
that.
live and breathe by as well.
Yeah.
Because when we have these new ideas and there's new technologies and things, it's like, let's try this, let's do that. If it's not going to work, let's on to the next,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
So
much.
we're getting a little low on time. So I just kind of want to ask too. We heard a little lessons learned, but I do want to ask if you have, one piece of advice to aspiring leaders, what would you give us?
Yeah.
What would you tell the audience?
Um, well, I think it goes for anyone in the professional world or anyone in the world. You, as soon as you are comfortable, you're not learning, you're not improving. You're
Yeah.
yeah. I read this book. Okay, I was like, I had this timeline for old Joe, right? And I'm gonna be fully comfortable in my 50s, man. That's my that's my horizon. I'll just start to ease off. I read this book. It said, if you're comfortable in your 50s, you'll be miserable in your 60s. Now, the whole idea, the premise is, look,
Wow.
you got to have disruption in your life. If you're not, if you're uncomfortable, if the opportunity that you're considering makes you feel uncomfortable, that's probably what you should go for. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, that's my, that's sort of my go-to thing. I try to follow it. I don't do the best because nobody wants to.
Sure, sure. So kind of as we wrap up here, I think one question that I have is you take that exact thing you just shared, right? Don't become complacent, evolve, pivot, change, all those things that you're referencing. So what is your vision for Fort Meade, right? What are you going to do to disrupt, or how are you going to stay relevant to the organizations that go to Fort Meade and depend upon Fort Meade? Is it going to be a season of innovation? Is it going to be a season of mentorship, or like what do you think things are going to look like here for the next couple of years?
Yeah, it's really easy to just sort of fall into the pattern of what worked yesterday and to continue to grow exactly that, just to a percentage point further. And that, in my opinion, doesn't serve the Fort Meade area as it should, because the Fort Meade area is grounded in technology.
Right.
Um, this is really, I believe this cyber center of gravity for the universe. Okay, I mean, I could point to all the factors that are there from, at all levels. Technology is driving this region, and so you have to, percentage points are not going to keep up with that vector. You've got to step out of it, continue to step out of it, and get out in front of it. Go to where it's headed. Okay. I always like to say, let's get to where the puck's going. Let's not follow that thing. And in all honesty, that's what's critical to this region, because it's just going to run off and leave us if you don't.
That's great.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And did you have any other questions?
No, I mean, I definitely want to just, you know, I think as Kaylee, just thank you so much for taking the time and sharing, you know, with the world, you know, some of those things that are, I think as a leader, you need to hear, you need a sounding board somewhere, right? You need to know what's working, what's not, how do you spend your time? And, you know, to hear that there are leaders out there that have come before us that have some of the same problems, and then more so how they go about solving them, right? I think is awesome. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. I feel this is why you're, one of my mentors. I feel super motivated after this discussion. So I'm like ready to hit the ground running and make myself better as, a professional. So thank you for joining us today.
Guys, thank you, for just offering this opportunity for folks to, get out some of their lessons learned, et cetera. It's great service to the community. Appreciate being a part of it.
Absolutely.
Truly.
So, a quick question, Joe. So, if those are who aren't part of Fort Meade Alliance right now, where could they go to join and learn more?
Well, our website is a great place to start. You can go there. You can peruse all of the things that we're involved in. Yeah, that would be the first place to go without question. The bottom line, if you're out there in Mojo land, and you guys have this great reach, I know you're out there and you're saying, I want to get involved, I want to get connected, I want to make a difference. Fort Meade Alliance is where you want to go. FortMeadeAlliance.com.
Great.
Seriously.
Appreciate that. We'll make sure we include that in the descriptions on the podcast as well. So we thank you, and then obviously Masterpiece as well. So if anybody has more questions about that, we can send them to your site as well. So
yeah, love to see the great minds to collaborate together, join the team. Come one, come all.
Okay.